Please be seated. Please continue, Mr. Karadžić.
Hvala.
Thank you.
U paragrafu 79
In paragraph 79, the prosecution claims that the leadership of the Bosnian Serbs and when making up these abbreviations and acronyms, they were more creative than the Soviets, Soviet writers of acronyms and abbreviations. BSL, or say CBS, for the Serbian language. It says that they wanted to keep as many territories as possible and to ensure their borders so that they would not be permeable as far as the Muslims were concerned. Karadžić is saying something completely different.
Evo ovako kaže, I guarantee that everything that extends the war in an attempt by the West to enable Muslims to bring territories back in order not to beg the Serbs, but now the entire international community has to beg Serbs to give some territories back. So we have to prepare ourselves to lose as less as possible in a firm, responsible, and statesman's manner. But that we get the main part, that is that a state outside any federation and confederation, and what is most important, in our opinion, we must not accept at any cost any member, not even to the weakest association, that outside Bosnian borders would be preserved, because it is the great danger today and tomorrow. Dakle, ja se zalažem za mir.
So I'm advocating peace, and I'm against the splitting up of Bosnia and against the annexation of different territories. And I'm advocating modesty in terms of territorial aspirations. A territory can be consolidated, ethnically consolidated, in several ways. The way that was proposed before the war and practiced before the war was what Mr. Izetbegović proposed, was the change of municipal borders in order to leave out villages that did not wish to belong to a particular unit, that preferred belonging to another unit. So that was a way that was stricter. It prevailed before the war because before every peace plan and before every peace conference, that was the main issue that he would raise. The OTP say here that I did not accept the Kutilera plan. We accepted the maps, and I had to tell the MPs that we were not accepting the maps because otherwise we would have had a very difficult situation in Parliament. And according to that setup, the Serbs had the right to their own police, and later on we would agree on the rest. The prosecutor says that even before the Kutiljero plan, the Serbs were preparing and asking for their own MOP. Well, that's why it was part of the plan, because we had asked for that and because the European community thought that that was justified. However, we did not establish the MOP before agreement was reached on the constitutional principles. We asked, we were setting this forth as a condition, we were threatening, we were saying that things had to be done in a legal framework. However, we did that only once that had been adopted.
istom govoru se govori
In the same speech, I say,
if we will redefine, then we have to agree to redefine. But trust me, it can be described and calculated how much we saved with the fact that we have not fought Croats for a year and a half. We don't know when I see young men in those areas, I think, would he be alive if we fought Croats? That is the God's will. That is the truth with Croats that appeared naturally. Many people stayed alive. Huge material means have been saved. This is the best moment for us to finish the war that our referee plays the end, on which occasion we have an excellent score, and it is better that we give something back. Although I know that it is harder for us, and they will curse and spit on us, and they will do a lot to us. It is better that we give back than to ask back. Dakle, tužilaštvo potpuno zanemaruje.
So, the prosecution is completely disregarding the context in which I am saying that the territories of others should not be taken, that people should not lose their lives on account of certain territories that we would return anyway, and so on and so forth. So a false picture was created. And this paragraph 79, like the entire case against me, is false.
Drugi način da neka teritorija bude.
Another way for having a pure territory is for the army of the other side to take that area, round up the population from their homes, and deport them somewhere. That did not happen in the case of the Serbs. To a large extent, that did not happen as far as others were concerned too, and this is how and why. There weren't any undefended places that had declared themselves undefended, so the army could not enter a particular town or village without fighting through defense lines. Once the defense lines would be down, the population would leave even before the army. The army would not wait for the enemy army to enter their village or town. In the areas that the Serbs took, such as Jajce, such as Odžak, such as Podrinje later, the Serb army never had any contact with civilians. The civilians had left earlier on from all of these places. That's what the Serbs did. When Grahovo fell, Glamoč, Petrovac, Sanski Most, Mrkonjić grad, Šipovo. The people fled the very instant they realized that the lines could not be held. So that was not the way in which ethnic cleansing was carried out. The third possible way was that the army that had their own government in that territory would not have to fight its way in. They could get the people rounded up and deported, but that never happened. Witness 310 spoke about seeing, 300, 400 people at Grbavica at 6 o'clock in the morning as they were crossing the Vrbanja bridge. Is somebody trying to say that these people were rounded up forcibly at their homes? How many soldiers would be needed for that kind of thing? And what kind of chaos would that have meant? Obviously, that had been agreed upon. There were lists. Music talked about the situation in Karadžić. 7 times his family went for this agreed exchange of civilians, and every time it is the Muslim side that did not allow this to happen. They would return to the sports center and they would wait for the next exchange, and it was only the 7th time that the exchange took place. So that's what the witnesses told us here. They said to us that we would have an hour or two to get ready, but yes, that means 2 hours if they wanted to get to that bus. They had placed their names on the list a lot before that. They even paid all their dues to the state before that. They settled all their accounts. And then they would be informed as to when the bus would arrive. We saw that. However, Kotorvaroš is not in the indictment. Actually, I don't know whether we accepted that. At the presidency, it's said, they say, well, the Croats from such and such a place paid money and they were not exchanged, so then their money should be given back to them. So that is how they were leaving our territory, without any kind of fighting before that. Please let us take a look at this. What one of the members of parliament said, the late Branko Simić, in P1369 on page 33 and 34. The most liberal Banja Luka is asking for 3 documents to allow someone to move out. Many municipalities are asking for all of 14 documents in order to allow a person to leave.
Grgo Stojić.
Grgo Stojić, another prosecution witness, told us here about his village, this Croat village in Sanski Most, how they surrendered their weapons and they lived a normal life. They got a lady teacher who was a Serb, who came every day. The municipality paid for these classes. The Muslims went to the center in Sanski Most on market day to buy and sell, and they would return once they were done. And one day, on a Monday, he says, I noticed 2 criminals waiting for me. And these 2 criminals took him to some other place where there were other Croats. They killed them, but he managed to survive. From that instant, when he established contact with normal Serbs and the state organs, the police, hospital, the Red Cross, and so on, that very moment he was saved. Daniluško Kajtez is not Republika Srpska. Republika Srpska are the policemen who took him in, who took a statement from him, who put him into hospital. Republika Srpska are the doctors who treated him and informed the Catholic organization Karadžić and took care of him so that he could continue his medical treatment. And he appeared as a witness only after the war, and that is why Daniluško Kajtez could not have been tried, because there weren't any witnesses. All of that is contained in our final brief. And I also sent to the trial chamber and to the OTP everything that I've been saying. That's our response to their final brief.
Šta kaže?
Please take a look at this, what Grgo Stojić says. He needed quite a few documents to leave. You have to pay for this and that, and then you have to pay taxes.
Platiš transport.
You have to pay for transportation. You have to pay for PTT and so on and so forth.
Leave. Had to apply to leave. Then were given a list of various certificates and documents that they needed to provide. After that, if there was any outstanding tax, it had to be paid. Then they would be put on the convoy list. After being put on the convoy list, they would be notified about the next convoy. The notification about the convoy came over the radio. Dakle, radijom su isterivali ljude.
So they drove people out by radio, and that's called ethnic cleansing. There is no example of a case when official authorities rounded people up and drove them out. There were individuals, renegades, or refugees who had been driven out of their own homes that had been set on fire, committed acts of retaliation. But this is an official agency formed by ARK that Arkan and private agencies followed. They did leave their homes with a heavy heart, but they left of their own free will. What happened with those who had not paid taxes, who did not have the money? They were not able to leave. And what about those who did not even ask to leave? They stayed in those towns until the end of the war. There was not a single place that was devoid of Muslims. The prosecution mentions Milivoj Milinčić in a negative context. Miloš Milinčić was the president of Srbac municipality and a member of the main board of the Serb Democratic Party. Bosanski Kobaš is a large Bosnian place in Srbac, and before the war we have that intercept. Mr. Milinčić informs me they don't accept for an outpost of the school called Sveti Sava to bear the name Sveti Sava. In that intercept, I tell him this is their ancestor too, just like Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, and Joseph. It is a Muslim ancestor, just as Serb. Still, they didn't accept, and they suggested another name, the name of Meša Selimović, an important writer of Islamic faith. That's what I suggested. I did not impose this on Milincic. He was asking for my advice and my support. And before the war, we were trying to find a solution that the Muslims in Kobash would find satisfactory. They did not move out. They formed a unit of the army of Republika Srpska called Meša Selimović. Throughout the war, they fought for Republika Srpska. They did not fight for the Serbs. They fought for the values that are common to Serbs and Muslims, democracy and a secular state. Then the commander of that unit, later president of Bosanski Brod municipality. Those are the Muslims then who didn't have to go anywhere. They didn't have to leave. They signed up and joined the army of their own will. But Milincic made that concession before the war and met their request that the school be called not Saint Sava but Meša Selimović. And the prosecution portrays this lovely man, an honest man, in the way they do.
Vidjeli smo iz dokumenta koji je
We saw from the document sent by the Muslim government to the prosecution in the beginning of July 1996 an overview of all the places with the numbers of Muslim population before the war. For every municipality, they say Serbs took over power in Laktaši municipality, but not by war, by settlement. The Serbs were there in government from the beginning because the SDS had won the elections. But in all these municipalities, there was a significant number of Muslims. And the table made by Eva Tabo shows that more Muslims left municipalities after the Dayton Accords than before. When the war was over, when the borders were clear, people started moving. Until then, they stayed, although they had the option to sign up for convoys and didn't use that option.
u paragrafima od 57 do 70
In paragraphs 58 to 78, it is said that there was an alleged plan of ethnic cleansing and that Karadžić was informed of it at a meeting with the local authorities of Zvornik.
potpuno je jasno
It is perfectly clear what Karadžić said. We can find it in P2937. We see it on the screen now. Quote, I was told that the Muslim inhabitants of Kozluk village in Zvornik asked the authorities for permission to go to Hungary or Germany, otherwise they would be considered hostages. The Serb authorities asked for a signed document, including requests made by the Muslims. The Serb authorities of Zvornik municipality have written proof that inhabitants left of their own free will. This evidence contains a list of names as well as a statement that they were under no pressure. Each side has one copy. It is quite clear that they were free to return whenever they wanted to, and all of them, or almost all of them, did return. Some remained in third countries. Before departing, this organized departure, They were living in a chaotic way. And then the Orthodox priest and the Muslim priest came and told them, together with the authorities, they should not leave. However, when the conflict escalated, the authorities were not able to guarantee safety even to its own officials. Militaries slapped them around, they stripped them naked, detained them, beat them, etc. That is the truth.
U paragrafima
In paragraphs 44, 45, and later 77, 81, and 82,
aludira se
the claim is made that during the secret meeting between Karadžić, Jovanović, and Milošević, these three advocated the establishment of homogenized national territories. They were against the freedom of movement that would nullify the demographic structure of municipalities and the so-called new reality. You can look it up yourselves.
na početku svoga govora
At the beginning of his speech, Jovanović very clearly stated that ethnic cleansing is out of the question.
prema tome teritorijalna
Therefore, a territorial link with Serbia and Montenegro, that is to say Yugoslavia, has to be ensured in an indisputable way, which is not transitory. But what is more important is to make the territory that we get. And how do we get it? We get it at conferences. This meeting took place before going to New York for a conference discussing the Van Zoen plan. And whatever we were getting, we were not getting by firing weapons. We were getting it at conferences. Continuing quote, nationally homogeneous as much as possible, but not by means of ethnic cleansing, unquote. This is very different from the paragraph of the prosecution final brief, where it is claimed that I advocated ethnic cleansing. Continuing quote, ethnic cleansing is a trap. We should use a peacetime process of population exchange, in other words, migrations. Migrations are a matter of people's own free will, and they take years to happen. If people want to go for that, it takes years. And my support to Jovanović was by saying, yes, let things happen naturally. Why would we even think of ethnic cleansing when people are deciding to do this themselves? And we now see that the Muslims have returned to Zvornik. If the prosecution had looked at the map, they would have seen that in Sapna and other places in Zvornik were a Muslim municipality of Zvornik, and now that's Muslim territory. Paragraph 59 states that the Bratunac leadership bragged that there were no Muslims left in Bratunac, that ethnic cleansing had been carried out by local authorities. At that moment, the Serbs controlled less than 20% of Bratunac. In 80% of the territory, there was not a single Serb. in 20% of the territory, there were almost no Muslims. And in P 548, I said, we must not put pressure on people to resettle.
To nije za medije, to je na zatvorenom.
This is not for the benefit of the media, it was said at a closed meeting with the leadership. We must not put pressure on people to resettle. In paragraph 60 concerning Ilidža, the prosecution alleges that the local authorities were driving the population out, instigated by Karadžić. Prosecution witnesses themselves denied.
To je u P5.
It's P5065. Prosecution witness Prstojević testified that there had been 55,000 Serbs.
Drugi.
And 100,000 others in Ilidža. Prstojević and Kezunović denied having had such instructions, and Karadžić even said that not a single Muslim or Croat must have a hair on their heads missing.
Također potvrdio.
Glavaš confirmed it too. He was also a prosecution witness. I will not repeat what is written in our final brief. And in the prosecution final brief, paragraphs 69, 175, and 406 to 428, the prosecution deals with directives, especially directives 4 and 7, and the denial of humanitarian aid. To Muslim civilians. We have already dealt with it in our final brief in paragraphs 12, in paragraphs 1294 to 1329 and 3309 to 3317. I could also mention that Marek Goulding in February 1992, in December 1992, was saying that the international mass media are misrepresenting the shipments of humanitarian aid, which is quite sufficient, and the media are not properly reporting it. Concerning Directives 1, reference to paragraph 407 to 409 of the prosecution final brief. It is claimed that on the 5th June, Karadžić told Mladić to cleanse the area of Butmir, Hrasnica, Dobrinja, Sokolović colony. And soon after that followed a directive dated 6 June, that's D232, the prosecution intends to suggest that some illegal activities were involved. However, the fact is that in April and May 1992, the Muslim army and Muslim paramilitaries were constantly attacking Serb-populated areas precisely from Butmir, Hrasnica and Sokolović colony.
Dalje se
the contention is further that
dalje se previđa, tužilaštvo previđa da
actually the prosecution overlooks the fact that military operations in those parts never targeted non-Serb civilians, and the directive itself shows that it contains an order to the Sarajevo-Romania court to protect non-Serb civilians, the population there, the civilian population, during the operation. But the prosecution doesn't see fit to make reference to that in its final brief, in its paras 408 to 409. We saw exhibit order of General Karadžić, which says the police and the army are bringing the civilians from the combat zone to the barracks. I'm unable to take care of them. Please find some other accommodation for them. This is an obligation under our defense law. It is an obligation for civilians to be moved out, not to be resettled, as is translated by the prosecution in their documents. Moving out. Resettlement is a process of permanent transfer, but moving out is regulated under the law, and it has to be conducted. Here it is stated that Karadžić admitted that an order of now General Andrić of 28th of May 1992 on the ways of moving out civilians from Podrinje constituted ethnic cleansing. This order of the 28th of May was also was created, in fact, a week after the parties to the conflict had signed an agreement with the Red Cross. I believe that it is P1603 of the 22nd of May. And all the other consequential agreements actually invoke that original agreement from July and from the 27th of August and the 27th of 30th October actually invoke that original agreement. The only thing that Andrić failed to do is to refer to that agreement. But that was the gist of the agreement. The people and the civilians have to be removed or moved out from the combat zone.
U paragrafu 70 predprocesnog
In the pre-trial brief, paragraph 70, the OTP states that on the 31st of May 1992, Karadžić said, according to Mladić's diary, cleanse Posavina of Croats. Mladić's diary is not the diary, they are just en passant notes. And these notes are not verbatim annotations, but they are condensed form of what is happening. But the OTP could have checked up to what extent this annotation was actually in keeping with documents and other evidence. Did they find proof anywhere that a document had been issued which would instruct or permit actions against the civilians? Despite the large number, the large body of evidence shown by the defense, to the effect that vast efforts were invested to protect the civilian population, the OTP is looking for a totally contrary conclusion. The only conclusion to be drawn is that this sentence refers to cleansing military formations, military units of Croats from Posavina. The chamber already knows that Posavina is a corridor, the lifeline goes through Posavina, and it does not at all refer to Croats as such. At that time, we had Croats in our units. We had a colonel who was a Croat in the Sarajevo-Romania Corps. We had a lieutenant colonel at Pale, the commander of the logistics base there. We had a multitude of Croats in our army, so it does not refer to civilians because they wouldn't have stayed on in our army for a day if civilians had really been in question. I mean, these people in the army. I have to underline again, the Croats and Muslims who were in the army of Republika Srpska did not fight for the Serbian people. They fought for common values, democracy, secularism, and freedom.
Direktiva
the directive which prohibits the maltreatment of civilians and instructs observance of the Geneva Convention. This is D232. This is the exhibit. The prosecution says on the 8th of June, Karadžić issued an appeal to the public and to organs to help the Red Cross, but he issued no order. He actually issued an appeal, not an order. And as for the 13th of June order, which Karadžić issued, they call it instructions. It is quite the contrary. On the 13th of June, it was an order, and the instruction was a supporting document in terms of the procedure to be applied. The appeal issued to the public was intended to create a favorable atmosphere and position vis-a-vis the Red Cross and international organizations, including humanitarian ones.
Ja sam izdao 60.
I issued 64 orders instructing observance of the humanitarian law and protection of civilians. The OTP is totally disregarding all these. They never even tried to actually refute documents of a strictly confidential nature, which are express orders to organs of the army and of the civilian authorities to respect the Geneva Conventions and to respect the civilian population and life as such. The OTP suggests that it was a dual, two-faced policy. On the one hand, the orders were issued, whereas on the other, countermanding orders were issued. But the prosecution has failed to show a single counter order or countermanding order on the Serbian side, whereas it has totally disregarded such orders on the Muslim side. So can we see D43, please? D43, that is my order of the 16th of April for a cessation of actions directed at Srebrenica. In order to belittle the importance of this order, the OTP says Karadžić did this under pressure. First of all, under pressure or without any pressure, it doesn't change, it doesn't alter the fact that I stopped these activities. Second, there were pressures throughout the war, and sometimes I buckled under pressure. I yielded to pressure to help us survive, but I did not yield to pressure which meant heavy casualties or heavy damage to us. But in this document, you will see that I'm ordering that civilians should be protected. This is not what NATO asked me. That investigation not be conducted because they could be abused, that convoys be let through. Nothing of this content of this order has been shown. Nothing was under pressure, but the prosecutor does not want the picture to be portrayed in terms of what my position was towards humanitarian issues properly. On that same day, Sefer Halilović issued an order, which is document D343. The first one I mentioned was D43. It is just a mere coincidence from April 1993. And this one that I'm now talking about is D343. It is also of the 16th of April. Can we see it, please? Can you upload it, please? Sefer Halilović says is in that document, the truth that we ordered, forget about it. This is only for propaganda purposes. You go on with whatever you're doing. This is the moment when I stopped the activities surrounding Srebrenica, and Sefer Halilović actually ordered a continuation of combat actions and disregard of the previous order. What would the prosecution give if they could have only found just a single example of my own order or any order from the Serbian side, which is of such a dual nature, one issued for the public and the other one ordering totally contrary conduct? They haven't found it, and there does exist a Muslim one of that kind, but the prosecution chose to disregard it.
U paragrafu 70
In paragraph 74 and 541 of the brief of the prosecution, they refer to the testimony of Ambassador Okun to the effect that Karadžić exploited the results of ethnic cleansing, etc. Please take a look at page 1818 of the transcript, which is the testimony of Ambassador Okun. When he says, I'm surprised to hear that you are saying that I think that your appeals were insincere. I said the opposite. I said that that they were praiseworthy. I said that they were commendable. I said that they had merit, etc., etc. Ambassador Okun, in other words, believes that it was so, as he put it. Here, the OTP has put it to the chamber that President Dodik came after his testimony to greet me and to kiss me 3 times, and the prosecutor thinks that is important. But they omitted to say that the Ambassador Okun also, after the chamber had left the courtroom, also came to greet me and to kiss me. Neither is important except for private relations, but the prosecutor chose to report the first and to disregard the second, not to report it. In paragraph 106 of the prosecutorial brief, the prosecutor contends that allegedly Karadžić had stated that the Bosnian Serbs had the support of the Serbian secret security service, that is, when Arkan arrived.
pet
The reference P1448 on page 133 does not make any reference to Arkan or the Serbian State Security Service. It just says that the SDS asked
koje su bile podržane, što je bilo podržano od strane državne bezbednosti.
but only indicates that the JNA requested from Serbs before the war not to organize their own army, which was supported by the State Security Service. Regarding relations with Arkan, one should read our paragraph 1076 to 1088. That is the defense brief. Yes. When the OTP referred to document P5888 to support the claim that Karadžić had orchestrated the arming of Serbs outside JNA structures, this document actually says something else.
To je između mene I Vukića.
Here, this is between me and Vukić. I don't have to read it. You can see it on the screen, but for the sake of the public, I should read it in English.
Fuck it, I want us to form the para-units, army, weapons. What do I? Karadžić said. No way. No way. Vukić, do you know what should we do? Tell me, Karadžić said. I said no way, no Serbian army. It all has to, those are all under the reasoned things. Further, dakle, puno je dokaza da.
So there is ample evidence that Karadžić never encouraged the creation of Serbian imperial armies, And all arming, any arming, had to be done within the territorial defense, which is under the command of the JNA, or within the reserve companies and battalions of the JNA, which were the reserve, which could be drawn upon at any point in time. In paragraphs 234 to 242, the prosecutor says the government belonged to Karadžić, who controlled it completely. Our response to that is in paragraphs from 904 to 2933. The president has a number of powers. They are reflected on the election of the prime minister designate, and they have to do with that and the harmonization of relations between state organs. The president shall also see to the implementation of democratically adopted decisions in his party before the war and after the freezing of the work of the party when the war began. And if the prime minister designate whom he proposed is not doing his job well, he cannot remove him, dismiss him by himself. He has to go before the assembly. Neither the prime minister, he cannot remove the prime minister or any minister. The assembly was the supreme organ of power. Of course, the president had to see to it that the state organs were doing their job well, not how they were doing, but to harmonize their work. If a ministry is not functioning well, the president could not replace the minister. He had to ask the government to forward a proposal to that effect to the assembly, which is the case, as far as I know, in all democratic countries. Paragraph 237 of the prosecution's brief contends that Karadžić reiterated in March 1995 this point when he told those who were attending a Supreme Defense Council meeting, yes, that is the Supreme Command.
Honor. Or to it is, if it is succeeds, I am responsible. The army is mine as much as the ministers, as much as the prime minister is mine, so the army is mine. Tužilaštvo zloupotrebljava moj...
The prosecution is abusing my clashes and misunderstandings with structures, especially military structures, where I'm trying to convince them that they have to carry out orders faster. If they were doing all of that without any objections, then this sentence would not have been there. And by the way, my clashes with the officers had nothing to do with any crimes of theirs. All witnesses testified here that my conflicts with the officers of the VRS were of an ideological nature because they had come from a different ideological communist background. And when I asked the witness whether Mladić had committed crimes, he said, had he committed crimes, we could have replaced him more easily. Do I understand this correctly, that this is time for a break?
We'll have a break for an hour and resume at 1:40.
All rise. We will leave it.